Good morning everybody, and welcome back to another update video. Well, we're getting kind of spoiled this week because just this morning we got a giant blog on some future wilderness changes that could be coming pretty soon. Now this blog is mainly covering fundamental changes to the wilderness and is not really going to include any new content in this blog. However, there are going to be future wilderness changes this year that will include new content and the Wilderness Boss rework. However, today is just focusing on integral changes. That's going to be stuff like tackling skull tricking, PJ timers, among quite a few other changes. Now with all that said, they do include some information regarding the equipment rebalance, specifically the wilderness related part of that. We do have some new information regarding that, as well as a bunch of new changes to the Revenant caves. Now I'm really excited to get into this, even though I'm not a PvPer. I am glad to see that the wilderness is getting addressed. As always, if you do enjoy the recap videos, don't forget to leave the video a like, always helps out a lot. Anyway guys, let's get started. Alright, so exciting stuff, Wilderness Changes 2021. Now this is not the first time we've had some significant wilderness changes, the first one back in 2014, and there was another big set of changes back in 2018. So it looks like at this rate it takes about 3 or 4 years to get any changes to the wilderness. So let's see what's going to happen in 2021. Now the first thing to highlight here is all of these changes are not going to be pulled. So JKX writes that the main issues we're addressing today are long-standing and largely related to balancing. Many of the changes outlined here are also intended to benefit those who engage with the activities listed the most. As such, the content offered within this blog will not be pulled. This approach is similar to our previous balancing efforts, only rather than simply adjusting numbers, we're hoping to achieve better results by focusing on much higher quality changes. Now the first thing they address in this blog is skull tricking. Now skull tricking has been an issue in the game forever, right? Dating all the way back to when the wilderness was first created. A very simple explanation on what skull tricking is simply tricking your opponent into sculling. I mean, it's in the name guys, I'm sure most people know what it is. There are a ton of different ways to skull trick your opponent, from dressing up as a NPC, for example a Chaos Druid or an Earth Warrior, all the way to pretending you're the Wilderness Lever. I mean, there's some creativity there for sure, but overall it is definitely a deterrent for most players to go into the wilderness. Now currently you can turn your player attack options off, so there would be no chance of skull tricking. However, the issue there is you can't attack your opponent, so you just can't fight back at all. Now the solution that they are hoping to implement is just to add in another attack option that would read something like disable all attacks that would result in me getting skulled. So that way you'd be able to be assured by an in-game mechanic that you couldn't skull by accident. And the final change for skull tricking is they want to make it so that you cannot lose your skull while you're in combat with another player. Now below that they also mention luring. Now luring is kind of a hard one to tackle with an in-game mechanic because there's just so many different types of lures. I mean, how do you prevent people with malicious intent from taking advantage of dumb people? I'm not sure. So the changes they want to make here is to map extra safe areas around banks and hotspot locations in PvP worlds. And they also want to make doors always open in PvP worlds so you couldn't get stuck between doors. So yeah, a few changes here, but I mean there's dozens if not hundreds of potential lures out there. But I mean at least they're taking a stab at it. So next up here, there are a few interesting mechanics that can happen when players are fighting in between a multi-combat zone and a single combat zone. Essentially, the rules of the zone that you are in apply in a really weird way. For example, if two players are fighting in a single combat zone and there's a player nearby in a multi-combat zone, a player that is nearly about to die could actually attack that third player in a multi-combat zone even though they should be in single combat. This will be fixed with this set of changes, which means the rules of the zone that you are in will be applied fairly and accurately, independent of where people are standing. Alright, next up here we have a few changes that people have been asking for a long time now. PJ timers and changes to single-way combat. Now, around a year ago, they changed just the Revenant Cave to a new distinction that was called Singles Plus Combat. Now, essentially the way that varies from just regular single-way combat is normally in single-way combat, if you are attacking an NPC, like a monster you're fighting, you can't be attacked by a PvPer at the same time. However, in Singles Plus Combat, if you are fighting an NPC, you are also able to be attacked by another player. However, that still is distinct from multi-way combat where literally anyone can attack you at any time. Singles Plus is just to allow PKers to get you off monsters and not have you run into a giant pit of rats or something and then just X-log, and to remove some of the kind of, well, let's say, jankier ways to escape. So they added that specifically into the Revenant Cave. However, with this set of changes, they want to replace all single-way combat areas in the wilderness with Singles Plus. which means PvP will always take priority regardless of what you're fighting. However, there will still be distinct multi-combat zones and single plus zones. Now with that, they also want to add in a PJ timer of 10 seconds. So that means while you're in singles plus combat, if you're fighting another player and you kill them or they run away, you will have 10 seconds before a third party can attack you, giving you a bit of time to pick up your loot, regroup, and carry on. So that's it for single way changes. As of now, there are no changes to multi-combat. Okay, so next up here we have loot keys. Now you may remember these from the Deadman mode tournament. Now the way it worked in Deadman mode is whenever you killed someone, you got a loot key, stacking up to 5 of them. Now the benefit of the loot key is you could stay out PKing a lot longer because all of their loot would only take up 1 inventory spot instead of potentially like your entire inventory for 1 kill. So you go on a longer PKing trip, you kill 3 or 4 players, then after you're done you could redeem the keys at a bank. So they're looking to bring that mechanic to old school, but with a few changes. So loot keys will not be on by default. You would actually need to purchase the ability for 5 million coins. From there, you'd be able to toggle the loot keys on and off at the Ferox Enclave. So the keys are very similar to Deadman mode. Once again, you can hold up to 5 keys at once. If you already have 5 keys in your inventory and you kill another player, then your loot will drop normally with no key. Now if you kill a player that has a loot key on them, you're going to receive their most valuable keys until you are now holding 5, which means you could potentially get all of them. And if a player is skulled and has 2 or more keys in their inventory, they'll have a skull icon showing the amount of keys that they have. There'll also be some customizability on what you want to go into the key. For example, you could exclude food and potions. You could also set a loot threshold, causing any item above that value to be excluded from the loot key. One notable exception here is, of course, Ultimate Ironman will not be able to purchase loot keys. Now, I think the main reason that they are pitching this idea is to keep more risk in the wilderness longer. If players are able to stack up to 5 keys and keep running around with a ton of loot on them, maybe that will lead to bigger kills for other players and more money at risk. Okay, next up here, there's a very small change to the Fountain of Rune. So I guess some players were taking advantage of the free runes with very little risk, so they're going to be adding in a timer that will prevent you from logging out for 3 seconds if you use the Fountain of Rune. I'm not really sure what that is particularly targeting, but there will be a bit more risk here now. Now the final kind of integral PvP change is actually to Ironman accounts, and this one is interesting. Currently, if an Ironman player kills a non-Ironman player in the wilderness, more often than not, that player can just run back and loot their items, because as you know, Ironman players are not able to pick up loot from people they've killed because it'd be way too easy to swap over items. So if an Ironman player kills a normie, then most likely they just run back and pick up their stuff. However, they want to make it a little more nail-biting so that any items that would normally drop on death still will appear on the floor, but no one will be able to pick them up, including the player that lost them. So I guess that just means that those items are being deleted from the game, or other players can go and loot them. I'm a little confused about this, to be honest. Let me know in the comments down below what exactly your interpretation of it is. But to summarize now, if you get killed by an Ironman player, you do risk all your stuff, similar to if you were killing a regular player. Okay, so next up here we have more information regarding equipment rebalancing, specifically for the Din's Bulwark and a few other items. Now, they're making another change to Din's Bulwark, and this is a massive one. They're going to be changing it immensely by adding on a mechanic that has never been seen in old school RuneScape before. Defensively, it's still going to be quite a bit weaker overall. However, the trade-off is you will actually be able to use the shield more as a weapon. And they're going to do that by adding in a new defense scaling mechanic that will give you strength bonus based on your defensive stats. Now as for the changes, they are going to be increasing the attack speed and attack bonus, giving it increased DPS and additional utility in a tank role. The special attack is also going to be buffed, allowing it to reduce the offensive capabilities of every monster it hits. Now they state here, while in offensive mode, the Bulwark strength bonus will scale based on the defense bonus of all of your equipped gear. Now they've also upped the crush attack bonus to 124, where previously it was 110. While as mentioned, reducing the attack speed to 5, which will increase its overall DPS as an offensive weapon significantly. So again, while not in defensive mode, your melee strength is increased by the following. So the total of your average stab, slash, crush, and range defense minus 200 divided by 3. So to put that in perspective, if you have the best in slot defensive gear, you will have a max hit of 46, where previously the max hit would have been 32 in the exact same gear. However, if you have less than ideal defensive gear, then the max hit will actually go down from where it was previously. At the low end, it will have a max hit of 15, so somewhere within that range. So this is pretty much completely changing where you'd actually use the Din's Bulwark at. Now that you can effectively offensively use it, it's actually a viable weapon to tank God Wars, for example, or other PvM scenarios. Now, as mentioned, the special attack is also going to be different. For every monster hit with it, it will reduce their highest offensive stat by 5% of its current value from either melee attack, range attack, or magic attack. So that is definitely by far the biggest change that they are making. However, there are a few other minor equipment rebalancing changes and a few things that actually have not been brought up before. So next up here we have Zerishan Robes. Zerishan Robes are going to be getting nerfed. In total, 10 magic attack are going to be removed from the entire set, making them significantly weaker. Now on the opposite side here, Elemental Staves are going to be buffed. Right now, a regular staff, a battle staff, and a mystic staff all have the exact same magic attack bonus. However, they're going to be changing that. Regular elemental staves are going to remain at plus 10 magic attack. Battle staves are going up to plus 12, and mystic staves are going up to plus 14, making them notably stronger. Okay, so next up here we have Dragonhide Armor. Another iteration of changes here, my goodness. I'm not going to go over all of the numbers here, but essentially they're making the nerfs a bit less impactful. For example, the old proposal was about a 30% nerf on average, and now they're going down to just a 25% nerf or something like that. So Dragonhide will be a little bit stronger. And the final thing they're going to be addressing for equipment rebalancing is Blessed God D'Hide Armor. All God variations of armor will retain the same stats they have right now. No nerfs are going through on Blessed God D'Hide. And in addition to that, they're going to be removing the defense requirement to wear them as well. So once again, quite a few equipment rebalancing changes. Now coming up next here is a big one, the Revenant Cave. Now the Revenant Cave has had quite a few iterations and changes to it, and in the current iteration, most players would agree that it is a little underwhelming. So they're going to be making a few more changes to the Wilderness Cave, and the first thing they are going to be changing is how you actually access the cave. Currently there are two entrances to the Revenant Cave. The one in level 26 Wilderness is now going to be made a one-way only route, which means you can go in that way, but you cannot get out, which means the only way to leave is going to be to teleport, or I guess to run up to the northern entrance. Now there are quite a few other changes they're going to be making to the Revenant Cave. First up, they're going to be increasing the number of Revenants available within the cave, starting with one additional spawn in every location. They're also going to be reducing the respawn timer by 30%, so all of the Revenants will respawn quicker. Now on top of that, they're going to be making the Revenants a bit easier to kill by adding a cooldown to their healing mechanic, so they can't heal over and over and over again if they have healed recently. Now to add a bit of variety and perhaps more difficulty to some of the higher level Revenants, they're going to be adding in a unique mechanic to the Revenant Dragons, the Revenant Dark Beast, and the Revenant Orc. They're also going to be making the Revenants weaker against different combat styles to encourage the use of a variety of weapons. For example, right now everyone just uses the crossbow, however maybe now the Vigorous Chainmace will be viable, or maybe even the Thamron Scepter, who knows. Quite a few of the drops from Revenants are no longer going to be noded, which means if you want to take full advantage of the cave, you will now have to use the Amulet of Avarice. And to top things off here, the Revenants are going to be getting a straight up loot buff by 50%. Now beyond balancing changes, there is one other big change they want to make to the Revenant Cave, and that would be adding in Revenant Bosses. Mechanically, how it would work is the Revenant Boss would have a chance of spawning after every Revenant kill. There'd be a broadcast sent to everyone within the cave, and while the Revenant Caves are in singles plus combat, the boss would be excluded from this, which means multiple people could attack the Revenant Boss at once to try to vie for the loot. The boss is not going to be dropping any new uniques, however you will get 3 rolls at the Revenant table, which means you do have a higher chance of getting a Revenant weapon or just regular loot. Which means killing the Revenant Boss could be worth a couple 100k at the minimum per kill. I gotta say that idea is actually pretty cool. Okay, so moving on here to another Wilderness only cave, we have the Wilderness Slayer Cave. This was added in about a year ago. But a lot of players don't really end up going there because the risk to reward isn't generally worth it unless you have to for Konar Slayer or something. So they're going to be making some changes here to make it more worthwhile to go to the Wilderness Slayer Cave. One of the major changes is they will be updating the drop table of all the cave monsters, so there are some items unique to the area, which will include some of the Wilderness exclusive consumable items like Blighted Anglerfish, Blighted, Super Restore, stuff like that, in hopes that that will increase the demand to kill these monsters, as they should have an increase in GP per hour. They're also going to be adding in a Slayer only area for Abyssal Demons, Dust Devils, Jellies, and Necrules. Now finally here, they'd like to add in the addition of Superior Wilderness Slayer creatures. So if you do have the Bigger and Badder perk unlocked, you would have the chance now of getting a Superior Wilderness Slayer creature. Now if you do kill it similar to a regular superior, you'll get 3 rolls on the drop table. However, in addition to that, you're also going to be guaranteed a roll on the blighted item drop table, a Laron's key, and an ensouled head. Now if you do get all of those at once, that is going to be a crazy fat drop. And finally, that is it for the proposed wilderness changes as of today. As mentioned, there are going to be future changes in 2021, including a rework of the wilderness demi-bosses, but that is going to be coming later in the year. So quite a few interesting changes in here. As always, I'm interested to know what you guys think of these changes. As always, let me know with a comment down below, and I will definitely read all of them. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you next week. Now before I go here, I'm going to give a massive thank you to all of my members over on YouTube. A huge thank you to Wolf the Hunt, Collin Corley, Timothy Chen, Guy Fox, Ocelot, and Kush Patel for all being subscribed at the Dragon tier. As always, you guys are awesome. Also a massive thank you to Hunter Durand, Lord Dojin, All Things Gaming, Yo-Yo Sub 89, Need My Pills, Birdbot, and Base Titch for all being subscribed at the Runite tier. Thank you guys so much. As always, if you guys are looking for another way to support the channel, becoming a YouTube member is an awesome way to do so. You can get access to my video release schedule, get immortalized in all of my future videos, and of course, get a custom role in my Discord server. Thanks again, and I will see you next time.